This book that I'm going to explain to you in the following video takes place in East Los Angeles. I hope you enjoy my project. Hi, for my book project, I read a book called Almost Lost. It's an anonymous book about a teenager's life on the streets and how he recovers from his life on the streets. So, this teenager's name, it's anonymous, but in this book they put a name. His name is Samuel Gordon. Samuel Gordon's his name. And he lives in East Los Angeles, which is a kind of like a bad place, neighborhood, where there's a lot of drugs and shootouts and violence. And he's very depressed and he doesn't like his life and he's angry all the time. He's always angry, yeah, basically angry. So his mom's kind of worried for him. So she sends him to a therapist, and he absolutely, absolutely hates the therapist. He doesn't like him at all. When he gets there, he has the worst attitude. He doesn't like him. He's like, why do I have to be here? It's the worst. And he's all like, why? I just want to go away forever and just live on the streets. So the next week, he disappears and to the streets, and he lives on the streets for 3 months, or 3 months to a whole year on the streets, just a whole year. And his mom's super worried, so she goes to the therapist, and the therapist gives her advice. So some events in this person's life is after he comes back on from the streets, he goes to the therapist. The first thing he does is go to the therapist. And he's changed. He's different, and he actually wants to be there. And he tells the therapist he doesn't want to feel any worse. He wants to get all the garbage out of him. So in the first session, this is one of the events that happens to him. In the first session, he talks to the therapist about what happened. So the reason he left is because in school there's like a lot of gangs in his school, and he decided to join a gang, and he went to their place, and they beat him up. They beat him up, but he liked getting beat up. He That's the only time when he felt he was alive, like he could live, because he thought he wasn't worth anything. So that's the only time when he felt alive, and he kept coming back and back and back to the gang, until eventually he thought the gang was his family, his brotherhood. So he completely, without thinking, just left his house and went with the gang. And the gang was smoking, drinking, and at first he was like, I'm not gonna do that, I'm not that dumb. And then the longer he was there, he started smoking drugs and drinking, and it got worse and worse each day he was there. So, and then he was so stoned, which means he's very drugged, and he was in a shootout, and they shot him in the shoulder, the pelvis, and on a rib. And then the gang, they wrapped him up in plastic and took him to a hospital and just left him here. They didn't want to be with problems in the hospital, and this is what Sammy told the therapist what happened to him, that he got shot and he was mugged and everything. So that's one of the very major events that happens in this book, when Samuel first comes back from the streets and talks to the therapist. Another major event in this book is when Samuel Gordon is very little. He hasn't had he's like 10 or 11, and his dad's still there and everything's good, and he respects his dad. He thinks he's a good person, and then that he should follow what he does and stuff like that. Like we follow our dads, and we think he's a good example for us. But then that in the middle of the night he's sleeping, and then he hears laughing downstairs. So he goes to see what it is, and it's his dad and his friends, there. And then he sees his dad, and he's doing drugs, and he's like, I can't believe that's my dad. I respected him. I thought he was a good person. I thought I thought he was better than this. And he was drunk. His dad was drunk, and he was drugged, and Sammy was very sad at this moment that why is my dad smoking? Why is he doing this? So later, like a couple of days later, Sammy goes to where they were, his dad's friends, and finds the drugs. Sammy picks up the drugs, and he gets drugged because he thought it was the right thing to do because he follows his dad's example. And then his dad later comes, and he finds his son on the floor, drugged and like passed out. And his dad's very angry, and he hits him and abuses Sammy. But Sammy doesn't know why he did that. So that's when Sammy's hatred and despise, like stuff he didn't, when he started to feel depressed and stuff started happening. And then he hates his dad's guts. He absolutely hates him. He detests him. He doesn't like him, his dad. Okay. So then later, his dad and his mom come to the therapist that he's going to, and Samuel's dad, which his name is Lance, explains to him why he hit him. The reason he hit him is because he knew his life was messed up, and he didn't want it like this, but it turned out this way anyways, and he felt responsible for what happened to Sammy, and he didn't want Sammy to go down to the deep black hole that Lance was in, that his dad was in. So that's why he hit him, and he felt responsible for his way. That he was trying to scare him to never do this again, to never do it again, that it's bad for you not to do it, you should never do this. So that's why he smacked him and hit him. But Sammy didn't believe him, and he got angrier and angrier and angrier, and eventually Sammy and his dad forgive each other, and everything goes back to normal, and they're okay. So this is another very important event in the book that happens. So this is the second major event. Because this book is anonymous, and he's not famous, and he hasn't shown anything to the world, instead of saying why he's famous and how he's helped the world, I'm going to say how the therapist who helping him, like helped him get better, how he did that, and how that made him better. So first, the therapist, at first, Sammy didn't want to go to the therapist. He was perfectly fine. He wasn't fine. He was angry and moody, and he was in pain. He was in pain, and he didn't like it. At first, like I said before, he didn't like the therapist. He was gone. And then later in the book, he comes back, going to the therapist, saying, I want to get all this junk out of my life. I don't never want to remember what happened to me when I was on the streets. So the therapist starts saying, okay, the first thing you have to do is dump all that negative energy and turn it into positive energy. So the first thing you have to do for this process is tell me and take all the stuff out and dump it. Just dump it. Never remember it again. So each time, so the first session, he told you what I told you as the first major event, and he dumped and he forgot it. And then he said, use something called positudes, which is good positude. Think about yourself as a good person. So 3 months later, he comes back and he's happy and he's enjoying life and he's not depressed. So he's like, yeah, it's working. I like this, but I still feel bad about what I did. So he gives Sammy a little sheet of paper, like a test, to fill out every week after it, so he gets better and better. So he like records on a little piece of paper how he feels, what he feels, if you're having any thoughts about this and that. And also he does something a hypnosis thing that makes him feel relaxed and at peace, to make him feel better and not so guilty about himself. So that's what he does in the second session. So now I'm gonna say what happened, like as a reaction to this. Oh yeah, as a reaction to this. So in the first time he went, and the 3 months later, he he was happy. At first he was like sad. He's like, "How's this gonna work? It's not gonna work." But then he goes with his parents. He no with his mom and his sisters. He goes back to the house. He stays in his house. He has a good attitude. He hasn't gone back to school yet, not yet. So he's in his house having a good attitude and everything, and it's fine. And he's having fun, and he's good. And then when he comes back with the paper, what he does, he in the next session he tells the doctor what he does. What he did was each week he filled it out, but so he got angry again because this girl he liked called Mo Harmony. Before he was depressed, and he hit her, and she said, "You're a monster. What are you becoming into?" And then he wanted to say hi to her and forgive her, and then she said, and then she was with the guy, and then the guy said, "Harmony, aren't you glad Samuel's back?" And then he's like, "What? I don't know who he is." And then she looked right through him like she wasn't there, and that made him feel angry and thought of all the negative thoughts again. So he was angry and depressed, and he was super angry at himself. He lost all the stuff he learned in the past week, but then he came back, and then the doctor told him to, and then he and the therapist came to an agreement that he, let's say, he should write a note expressing his feelings to her and helping him, and that's what he did, and they got better, and now they're good, and they talk and they have fun together all over again. And that's how the therapist affected Samuel's life and how Samuel reacted to that. Thank you for watching my English presentation. I hoped you enjoyed it. Bye.